All right. Hey, I think we're live. I'm going to go ahead and record to cloud as well, just in case uh, we're not out there. All right. Hey, I think we're live. I'm going to go ahead and record to cloud as well. Yep, we're live. All right, good. Hey, thanks guys for coming. This is the CNCF Tag Network meeting for October 24, 2024. And we've got a bit of an agenda today. So some news from work that's has been being done. We've got three different new sandbox projects. So Sermont, KMesh, and VN Kubernetes. So congratulations to you folks. This is wonderful news. Good. We also have a review of the Heimdall project that the TAG chairs have put together as counsel for just context for the project and counsel for the CNCF TOC. Let me interrupt for a moment and maybe say also that, hey, it's nice to have those of you that are on. Feel free to drop your name into the meeting minutes as an attendee. It's always nice to get names and faces together. It's nice to know who is here for posterity. Also, this is CNCF hosted meeting, and so please respect the CNCF code of conduct and be kind to the other attendees. Good. Well, lastly, and like the biggest item that we have as an order of business today is a proposal around our working groups and to evolve them. So historically, we've had a very active working group, the Service Mesh Working Group, which if we take a look at just this last KubeCon, so just for reference, for those that might watch this later, we're almost at KubeCon NA 2024. So that'll be coming up in about a month. So the last KubeCon was KubeCon EU 2024. We usually do a deep dive and an intro and deep dive at KubeCons about this tag. And we certainly go over the working groups initiatives. So the Service Mesh Working Group has historically had a couple of different streams. One of them about patterns, cloud native patterns. In context of service mesh, how they're used, how these different patterns can be made repeatable. What are those best practices? And there have been a number of patterns put together and published into a catalog. This catalog, the tool that many of the contributors that work within that working group use is Meshry, and so Meshry is a cloud management software. So it's a multi-Kubernetes cluster manager. Historically, or at least initially, it had a focus on service mesh. And so these are where some of the fruits of the service mesh working group have been produced and published. As part of that service mesh working group, there was a focus on performance management as well. The ability to generate load and measure the performance, characterize that performance over the wire in terms of latency against a service that a service is responding with as it receives requests, any microservice or even a large service, as well as to measure throughput. And so that was one of the streams. Part of that tied up against one of the Tag Network's sandbox projects called Service Mesh Performance. It's a specification. That specification focuses on measuring performance and some tooling to do that. So Nighthawk is tooling to help generate load and measure, characterize that performance. And this is a specification for defining how the different environments and different configurations and how to do that. It also itself produces a dashboard for publication of, whether you want to look at comparisons between service meshes or just you want to look at, have an understanding of the performance characteristics depending upon the configuration of your service mesh. This dashboard and the different types of tests are what that focuses on. Part of that particular project, and hence part of the service mesh working group, had been, well, the creation of a cloud native value measurement, a mesh mark. And so I won't go into the details there, but there's a formula that Meshmark uses to help express the value that's being derived from the infrastructure that you're running, in context of the cost of that infrastructure and the cost of that configuration. So good. Well, that's a review of what has been in the Tag Networks Service Mesh Working Group. Today, we're talking about like evolving that focus. Maybe, there've been a few different things that have been accomplished under this Service Mesh Working Group, like a publication into one of the IEEE papers or magazines, rather. A number of presentations, a number of things achieved. There have been a number of some of the people that are involved in the working group have expressed desire to take a look at, well, cloud native ontologies. Take a look at the next step, like after defining service mesh patterns. How can you take some of those patterns in the work that's done for expressing maybe a reference architecture or a best practice for how to configure and deploy your cloud native infrastructure? Was to expand that work from just service mesh centric focus and expand it into all of cloud native. And so that's a big old, depending upon how that charter is defined, that can be just like a real focus on reference architectures. Okay, part of those, that's one stream or thought that's been proposed. Another aspect of what's been proposed to evolve this working group is, better comprehending and in a formal way, expressing how it is that different cloud native, different cloud native infrastructure, different cloud native entities and projects interrelate with one another. Not only how they relate to their own resources and their own set of capabilities, but how each of those projects relate to one another as well. So maybe we'll go into some specific examples to help clarify that. There's some work that has been done already. And Yash, you're here with us on the call. This is some of the work that's been done as early as this last summer, is to help create a space for exploration into identifying what these relationships are. Do you want to say some things about this initiative, what's been done to date?
Yeah, so it is an area where you can define the relationship for the components or CRDs or in the Kubernetes. So it is we have made some progress. Many relationships has been defined. You can check out the missionaries report to look at the relationships, and we have a structure formally structured over here how you can create your own, how you can define a new relationship between components. So if you are interested, you can comment over there, and assign mentors will definitely help you to create a new relationship and define if you need any kind of. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, good. Previously I hadn't seen this comment here. Is this something that you've looked at from this individual from Sumangal?
I'm not sure. I might have missed this message from him, but yeah, I might have missed this message from him. But I actually asked for other contributors to join the community so that they can get more help and join the meeting. I might have missed this one.
Yeah, sure. I mean, maybe this is somebody that we let's read it real fast. Maybe this is someone that we need to reach out to and help ensure that either they're getting feedback or that they're being welcomed to participate more deeply. So So he says he has a project that focuses on creating a semantic graph that represents relationships between Kubernetes deployments and pods. Good. It's extremely relevant. Maybe he's just saying these two resources as an example, because certainly we're discussing, not only Kubernetes, all of Kubernetes resources, but the entire ecosystem of custom resources that sort of fall within the KRM, the Kubernetes resource model. And so for him, the primary goal is to use a particular graph database, Neo4j, to map out and visualize relationships. Okay, great. And he's got a project, ontology semantic graph. So he has okay, so in terms of what the project does, it prepares some data, formats that data into a CSV, describing relationships between deployments and pods. Can easily import that. All right, great. So uses Cypher queries, so that's great. It's good to know. And the visualization uses Neo4j browser. Sounds like, yeah, great. I mean, yeah. So I mean, without having looked any further, just some initial comments are, the purpose of this project from Sumangal is well aligned, and is extremely narrow in focus between two components in Kubernetes, the deployments and pods. I wonder if he might have missed Kubernetes services, or if maybe in the time that he posted this, he's gotten to that. But and the idea that graph databases can be used to help model these things, and Cypher queries can be used on those graph databases. This is great. This is well aligned with the thoughts, the draft that has been proposed for the working group, and yeah. So let's take a note to circle back, make sure that we're including Sumangal in this call for participation as we go to refine the definition of the scope of what we're attempting to do. Sumangal. And Yash, if you recall that individual's last name.
J3. J3.
Okay. Okay. Let's make sure we didn't miss the other. Good. Okay. So as we look at like defining the scope of this evolution, there's a draft proposal out there. Let's make sure we've got a link to this in the minutes. So we'll link this here. If for those of you that are on the call, if you're able to think of maybe better names or more appropriate names than ontology working group, then don't be shy. It is I think what we're expressing, we've sort of stated thus far is that potentially there are two streams within this ontology working group. One of them being focused on how to characterize, define, and defining how to characterize and define relationships, and defining many of those relationships, and how projects can participate and help ensure that their resources that they represent through KRM are included and considered for in this working group. That's one stream. The other potential stream is on patterns, which would be, would be like reference architectures or setting out to, with the relationships defined and an understanding of how to programmatically express these things, then putting them into patterns and publishing those patterns could be a second work stream or a second phase. Okay. In work stream two, part of the goal, it would be a continuation of the publication of design patterns, that we would continue to publish those, but they wouldn't be, again, restricted to a particular, to service mesh. The charter of tag network spans well beyond that, as well as the usefulness of the initiative spans well beyond those technologies. So relationship, now okay, good. So there's two potential work streams. If we go look at the draft for the work that the working group would do. Well, so part of the goal is to build out a knowledge graph that represents the relationship between Kubernetes resources. Those Kubernetes resources, it's implied that it's not just standard, but it's any custom resource or anything that leverages the Kubernetes API. The reality is, perhaps we might want to go, like the initial scope might be this focus, but the way that these relationships are expressed should probably be done in a way in which you can bring in any number of other types of managed entities beyond Kubernetes. Certainly, there are Kubernetes operators that many of the public clouds publish and give you access, to their cloud services via Kubernetes API. So, even in this first phase, the way that these relationships are captured works and is interoperable with cloud services. And so you can express the relationships there as well. Okay. Anyway, hopefully the purpose is fairly well understood. Like today, if you go look at a Kubernetes manifest, you're not going to necessarily find a clear expression of how it is that a Kubernetes service, for example, relates to a Kubernetes deployment. Like that can be expressed through match labels, but isn't necessarily expressly defined as like these two things establishing a path of communication and what that path contains, or like what port or protocol that happens over, or what container that would go to within the pod within that deployment. And so there's a lack of there's a lack of that. So thus far, like Yash, you were saying, there has been progress made on a proposal, a schema for defining how to characterize those relationships. It'd be good to get maybe an example of what that is here, and maybe a link to where that schema is published. So.
Yes, sir.
Um, yep. Yeah. So there's outside of some of the particulars about what properties are necessary to define for a relationship. Properties like if something depends on something else or something, if the relationship is unidirectional in terms of the way that communication flows. Um, there's lots of those properties to talk about. Um, in addition to that, though, we would be remiss if we didn't highlight the fact that there are existing initiatives in our ecosystem that touch upon these same goals of being able to express a model, have a schema for, have an ontology for how you express cloud native infrastructure or cloud native application. So part of what, like some upfront work to do is to socialize with some of these other initiatives, these other projects, the ideas that are within here and solicit their input, solicit their participation. So, and to be able to crisply identify how this is distinct from their initiatives, such that there isn't, the goal isn't not to overlap. The goal is to confirm that there isn't an overlap and that we shouldn't necessarily be considering the format that they have already. So we were just looking at, OHM, well, not just, but so certainly for myself and some others involved, we've spent time with OHM. I've not spent much time with Crossplane, but the composition model that Crossplane has is Kubernetes centric and may very well have a role here. There's some other projects that I'm not familiar enough with to be able to understand how much this initiative is complementary, and that they would either want to participate in this, or that this initiative would want to leverage some of what's been done. One of those is a CNCF project, KCL, if I'm thinking of it correctly. Yeah, it's certainly worth having on the list to confirm. So there's also, is it KCP? So this is, I am not familiar enough with KCP to know to what extent they express, to what extent this framework for control planes fully expresses the level of depth that we're looking for these relationships. But so we should have them on the list as well, though. With KubeCon NA coming up, or North America coming up, it'll be a good time, an opportune time to be able to maybe meet with some of these folks and socialize this idea with them. KCP. Can you guys think of other projects that we should be reaching out to? Well, I think part of what needs to be defined inside of the proposal here is sort of what's out of scope. And that'll also help with this list of related projects and how there's complement or overlap or underlap. I think part of what's been identified as out of scope is to date, it's only in context of format. So there's sort of a historical and an older two sets of formats, RDF and OWL, that are being identified as explicitly out of scope for the project. And rather the format that is of focus is YAML JSON is an open API compatible or JSON schema compatible form. But other things that would be helpful to identify as out of scope is like or to clarify things like open policy agent and Caverno and maybe others that of what we're attempting to express isn't necessarily mhm. I don't know, maybe this maybe we should leave this as an open question, like how far do we want to go beyond just the characterization, the definition of the identification and definition of a relationship between resources. Perhaps there's a third work stream that does step into any like a way of evaluating that relationship. And so this is an interesting point to tease out to the extent that Caverno and OPA as two examples, to the extent that they are used to either like prevent a relationship from being established, like maybe, to prevent one pod from being deployed to a particular node. Both Kubernetes scheduler will help figure out something like that, like a relationship between some characteristics of a pod and how it gets scheduled. That's a whole separate thing. That's like probably good to list as an example of what we're not trying to characterize. Or other projects we're not trying to step on, but to have an understanding of how they're characterizing that infrastructure or how they're identifying when a policy is violated. Yeah, so we've got open questions. Now, in some of the work that's been done to date, we've had two maintainers from OPA come in and take a look at the relationships that are defined. They didn't express any concern over ongoing projects or we can circle back though and confirm. So avoid duplication if we can and make sure we're being inclusive of these folks as well. So in concept, these projects, particularly Caverno, stand to benefit from the way in which these relationships are expressed. That if relationships like we were saying between a particular deployment and a particular service are expressed in this format and Caverno is capable of evaluating this format, then we evolve or boost Caverno's capabilities as well. Okay. So good. I mean, so today's meeting serves very well as a good working session to help advance the initiative. that working group. So we said there could be potentially a third work stream. Which is the evaluation of relationships. Now, we in this work stream, though, we want to be clear on what the benefit is to the ecosystem at large. So are we trying to help Caverno be more like be more intelligent and be aware of network-centric relationships, also be aware of like non-network centric relationships. So I've been using the example of like a service and a deployment, which is network centric in nature. The same many relationships though can be expressed using many non-network relationships can be expressed using the same descriptor. Like if you have a descriptor for how it is you characterize a network-based relationship with a node and a node, maybe an edge between them, that same format can define how two nodes maybe are siblings but don't have an edge between them, or two nodes are hierarchical in nature. They have the same genealogy. They have the same parent. They don't talk. They're like siblings. They have the same parent. They're not currently talking at the moment. And so to the extent that this effort, starts from a network-centric perspective, but can easily expand to be expressive of relationships outside of just node and edge, node to node. So other thoughts of where we should take this, how to refine its goals. Right. While we're thinking about that, I'm going to take a look at Sumangal's project. And so he used OWL, which is an RDF to, like in my mind, the term ontology doesn't dictate the format. It doesn't necessarily mean RDF or OWL, but to be more Kubernetes centric, we would lean into JSON schema, Open API. And so here, even Sumangal, as an example, he gets into these non-network centric relationships, which is the relationship between a pod and a deployment. Well, it's logical in nature. The deployment is the parent of the pod and helps maybe manage the life cycle or the rollouts of pods, or but isn't inherently network-based or isn't network-based. And so you can see that the type of relationship defined here is one that uses the word contains. So, and if I'm reading this correctly, it would be that like a deployment contains a pod. So the domain is the deployment, and the range for that domain are pods. It was great. So I wonder if any of this had picked up steam. Okay. All right. Well, so hey, as we go to wind down the meeting, there are a couple of tasks that we should set forth going forward. One, I think, is to tie off this initial draft and to send that out for socialization. So let's get a couple of action items. send out for requests for comment. And participation. Prepare for presentation at KubeCon NA. In the Tag Networks intro and deep dive session. Of the groups that we were identifying that to socialize this with specifically, there's another working group, the landscape, is it? Trying to remember. Where is it? One of the other CNCF working groups. Let's see, or not working groups, but tags. One of the other one is, was it a tag observability, I think, that has a working group. I don't remember if it was called topology or landscape. Do you guys see tag observability on here? Tag observability, query standard working group, the observe K8s working group. Okay, and there's the general tag observability meeting. They may well have a link to, well, to that landscape that I was just referring to. Landscape V2. Landscape graph. I don't know if this continues forth or not. Have any of you guys heard of this particular initiative, the landscape graph in tag observability? Not sure that I see it out here, but I do know Matt is someone that we should connect with. So I just wanted to make sure we have them down as someone to socialize with. Probably get it out to their mailing list as well. Yeah, over to Matt. He'd been heading that up. So landscape graph. Tag observability. Okay. Now for Yash, or are you taking any of these? I think Yash, you're going to be socializing some of these concepts, these relationship concepts with, at an upcoming event. Let's list that here as well.
Yeah, KubeCon India and KubeCon EU.
Nice. Yeah. So at KubeCon India, the topic is, or it's just both of these have that a topic of relationships or ontology. Is that right? I guess.
Yeah, not sure. I'm not sure if we have submitted any for KubeCon India, but we will be for KubeCon EU. but I will be socializing for Kubernetes ontologies. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, wait, and so the event that is scheduled and that you are socializing this at it's a CNCF meetup or?
Yeah, it is the CNCF meetup. It's on tomorrow, I guess, on 26th. Yep. CNCF Grow Run Delhi.
Okay, nice. Yeah, do you want to let's get those details just so
Yeah,
people.
sure. Just
This is good. Okay. So there's a bit of work to be done. So this one is for Yash. So Nick Jackson, by the way, who's often hosting this particular call, he's out on medical leave, and so I'll carry forth a number of these action items. There are we have a tech lead in the tag, and we have another co-chair whom aren't available today, but we've been messaging with them about this evolution, and so we'll make sure that that we've got their buy-in and support, and so let's also see where they can if they personally can help advance the initiative, help define it. Okay, good. So, well, with that, I think we've had a successful meeting. Gentlemen, did we miss anything or do you have anything else to cover?
no.
Yeah, okay. Okay, good. Hey, so we have KubeCon EU. So do we meet one more time before KubeCon EU arrives? I'm sorry, KubeCon EU, KubeCon NA. We meet. So today's October, the 24th. We meet. So November 14th. Yeah, so that would be the week of KubeCon. So we actually won't meet again. Actually, our intro and deep dive is on this Thursday, November 14th. So we won't meet again before KubeCon, but we'll be presenting this to attendees there. The next time that we will meet here, though, how do we go forth in this? The 28th, the 28th of November. All right. Let's do a little housekeeping about 14th. And then the 28th. Okay. We'll get some of that organized after the call and make sure we get an agenda out beforehand. We'll see how much activity and interest there is at KubeCon EU. Nice. It's nice to have you guys show up today. Thanks a bunch for the input, the feedback, the work that you've already done. So, okay. Hey, we'll see you guys later.